It's Friday, September 6th, and Hurricane Dorian ripped through last night. It was almost impossible to get any sleep because of how loud it was, how loud the wind and rain was. And the hurricane is almost out of the area. We're going to be under a tropical storm advisory all day because the wind gusts are still pretty severe. So it's pretty pointless to pick up after anything right now because the wind gusts are really high. Looks like we're actually starting to see a little bit of blue sky, so it should be cleared out by the end of the day. But for the time being, I guess we got pretty lucky. The storm stayed significantly offshore and kept most of the bad wind gusts with it. According to the Weather Service, the worst wind gusts in the area were in the 50s and 60s. So I'm going to have to clean all of this up. The garden is in a little bit of disrepair. You can see the squash kind of got ripped up a bit, but that was at roughly end of life anyway. Inside the garden itself, some of the dwarf tomatoes got ripped up. A couple of them are knocked over and they're kind of weak. So it appears that these were low enough to the ground that they can that they weathered the storm a bit. You can see where the roots down here are kind of pulled out. I may be able to stake these and stand them up and they should recover. My cucumber and squash vines are pretty beat up. This one's been mostly shredded, but it should come back in theory. I'm really surprised the eggplant kind of survived, but the direction of the wind must have been coming predominantly from the north, and between the cages and the trellis it kind of caught itself. So that's kind of interesting. The pepper beds are pretty ripped up. Some of these may survive. I'm going to have to try to restake things this weekend, and I might be okay with them, at least with some of them. What's surprising to me is how well laying down the tomatoes worked to protect them. So these tomatoes look mostly salvageable. I can't tell how kinked up they are until I stand them up, and I won't be able to do that until tomorrow because of the wind gusts. This dwarf tomato got split in half, so that one may be a goner. That's probably not repairable, but if that's the worst of the damage to my tomatoes, I would say I got pretty lucky. What's surprising is that I didn't lose power throughout the storm. My bananas are pretty ripped up, but that's what they're designed to do. This blood banana really took the brunt of the storm. My front of the home is north facing, so it takes the full force of the north wind, and it looks like that's what really got this banana. But this will come back quickly. This is a new leaf coming out, and I'm guessing in probably a month you won't even know it's damaged. These things grow so fast. You just have to hit them really hard with potassium, and they'll grow right back for you. It's Sunday, September 8th, and it took me all weekend to whip this place back into shape. The hurricane did quite a number on the yard in terms of ripping up this weed barrier. It was pretty much tattered and in pieces, and it took a couple hours to put back together. Then it took another couple hours to pull out all of these trees that I had hidden in the garage to weather the storm. And surprisingly, I actually got everything back into the exact same order that it was in before. I probably lost about 24 figs that swelled in the humidity of the garage and split and burst and went sour, so I had to pull them off. For example, I lost my first black Madeira, but I have another one that just started to swell and is turning black, so I should be able to try my first ever black Madeira soon. Most of my trees are getting pretty beat up and covered in rust, but overall some of the later season varieties are finally starting to show a little bit of life. I'm starting to get a Col de Dame Blanc that is just starting to swell as well, which is really awesome. I keep hearing great things about this variety. So I also got a couple of Col de Dame de Q Tots that have been ripening, but they're falling off early. This one was not in the pot earlier, and it's in there now, so this may be one of those trees that has a hard time holding fruit the first year, it appears. But I got everything back to where they need to be. I also up-potted a couple of palms. I have my one dwarf tomato that handled being trapped in the garage for 2 days like a champ. And overall, we're looking pretty good. So I'll take you over into the garden now. My bed of dwarf tomatoes got pretty beat up. They were low enough to the ground that they were able to weather the storm, but several of them got uprooted, so I had to hill them back up. This one's probably not going to make it. And I would say this one right here is definitely not going to make it. But considering that I had 16 plants and it looks like that 14 are going to come out relatively unscathed, I'm pretty happy with that because I really thought they were all going to get wiped out. My cucumbers and zucchini that I planted got pretty beat up. I lost one of the cucumbers. I plant these as doubles, so this one just, it got uprooted and destroyed, so that one's gone. It has been incredibly hot here every day since the hurricane. It's been low 90s and cloudless. So all of the roots got disturbed. So in the heat of the day, they start to wilt very badly because they lost their sure footing of the roots. So I have to come out here and water them several times a day. Hopefully the root systems will pick back up again, and hopefully they will survive. Luckily, I had two Arkansas little leaves that I started in cups, and they weren't big enough to transplant. So I just put them in, so no matter what happens, I will get some type of cucumber this fall, as long as we don't get another storm. My pepper garden got the pants kicked off of it during the storm. They all got blown over, and they were hanging at various angles, but I was able to stand them back up and stake them. You can see I put little bamboo stakes everywhere, and they're standing up completely straight. I raked all the dirt around them, and I watered them in very well, and I fertilized them. And they seem completely unharmed. Peppers are pretty amazing, and as long as they don't get completely uprooted, they should be in pretty good shape. My sweet potatoes look great. They're a vine, so they suffered very little damage. I can't believe that my basil survived. They actually look pretty good, so I spent Saturday cutting these back pretty well and giving them fresh high nitrogen fertilizer because they're 6 months old at this point, and they're just really beat up. So cutting them back and then giving them all-purpose Miracle-Gro with that high nitrogen shot, that should boost them back into growth. The most pleasant surprise was that cutting down my indeterminate tomato vines and lying them on the ground actually worked. They weathered the storm completely. But what is funny is laying them down, they started to grow up towards the sun. So just having them down on the ground for 48 hours completely messed up the orientation at which they're growing. So they're all hanging in all weird different angles. I'm also having a caterpillar problem because I laid them down on the ground, and you can see that I have a bug in my hand. I'm going to have to spray all of these down with BT because these little caterpillars are crawling all over the place. And this is precisely why you don't put your tomatoes on the ground. This is why we stand them up, because they will be absolutely inundated by pests. Here's another one right here that I can see. So I have to check everything over very, very well because these guys are taking over my crop. So overall, I can't complain. The storm stayed pretty well offshore, and it was enough to keep the wind gusts down to under 60 miles an hour. It was still brutal trying to sleep through the night because the wind gusts were so loud, and we got over 8 inches of rain, and it was really driving into the house, and it was really uncomfortable and kind of scary, but it certainly could have been a whole lot worse if the storm would have passed over us. So I want to say a thank you to everybody who wished me and my family luck during this ordeal. Thanks for your thoughts, thanks for your prayers. Maybe it helped keep that storm just a little bit further offshore. For everyone else that was affected by the storm, and especially those who were affected worse than I was, God bless you all. We're thinking about you, and I hope that you recover well. Everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for future updates and more videos like these. I appreciate your viewership, and I hope to see you all again next time.